Why was everyone ignoring her at the briefing table? Rachel Reeves had been in rooms like this before, rows of polished oak, the smell of burnt coffee, the air tight with testosterone and unspoken judgments. She wasn't new. She wasn't inexperienced. And yet when she raised her voice to ask about the satellite imagery, half the men in uniform didn't even look up. One of them coughed, another scribbled in his notes, and the colonel at the head of the table skimmed past her entirely, as though she'd been nothing more than background noise. But she didn't push. She never did. She had learned long ago that silence was its own weapon. They could underestimate her all they wanted. Out in the field, silence had kept her alive more times than she could count. What she hadn't told them, what she couldn't, was that her instincts were already screaming. Something about this mission felt wrong. The imagery, the grid zone, the way the intelligence brief framed the target as light resistance. It was too clean, too easy. She felt the old tightening in her chest, the one she'd carried since her first deployment when nothing had gone according to plan and 3 of her friends never came home. She carried that silence with her now, boarding the helicopter with SEAL Team Echo, the rhythmic chop of rotor blades drowning out any second thoughts. Reeves wasn't a SEAL herself. She was a transfer, an outlier, one of the few women ever to claw her way through naval special warfare's crucible of training. Not officially assigned to the unit, but borrowed for her gift with a rifle. Some had called her Wolf for the way she hunted from distance, patient, relentless, unseen. The name had stuck, though she never once asked for it. She sat near the rear of the eyes on the landscape scrolling beneath them. The Appalachians stretched in all directions like a sea of green stone, ridges folding into shadowed valleys no satellite could fully capture. To the others, this was just terrain. To Rachel, it was a chessboard. She counted angles, the flow of wind across tree cover, nodding where an ambush could be hidden, where a sniper might crawl unseen. She tried to shake the thought, but it clung to her like cold rain. When the helicopter touched down in a narrow clearing, Commander James Hawk Carter gave the signal, and 12 shadows spilled into the tree line, moving with disciplined quiet. Reeves adjusted the sling of her designated marksman rifle, checked her scope, and fell into position on the team's left flank. Routine reconnaissance, Carter had told them, a quick in and out. But Rachel had been in uniform long enough to know nothing about combat was routine. For the first hour, everything was quiet, too quiet. Their boots sank into moss-soft ground, radios hissed with short, clipped updates, and the forest seemed to hold its breath. Reeves scanned constantly, her scope tracing tree lines, cliff faces, gullies. Her heartbeat steadied, falling into that familiar sniper rhythm, slow, deliberate, detached. And then the forest erupted. The first burst of automatic fire cracked from the ridge above them, muzzle flashes stuttering in the shadows. Reeves dove behind a boulder, instinct already guiding her scope to the north face. Dozens of hostiles, camouflage, disciplined, not militia but trained operators, were moving with precision. She counted quickly, 1, 2, 10, 20. Her throat tightened, at least 50, maybe more. They'd been led into a contact front, contact left, contact right. Carter's voice cut through the chaos. His tone was steady, but Reeves caught the undercurrent, the knowledge that they were hopelessly outnumbered. Bullets screamed against stone, chips of limestone slicing into her cheek. She ignored the sting, focused on her breathing, adjusted her reticle. Her first shot cracked clean and cold, dropping a gunman who had just leveled a machine gun at the team's flank. Her second tore through a spotter's scope. But for every man she felled, 3 more seemed to take position. She whispered into comms, "I count at least 52. They've boxed us in." A hiss of silence followed, then Carter's voice, "Copy, hold positions." Hold, as if holding would save them. Reeves glanced across the ravine, saw Doc Martinez dragging a wounded man into cover, blood blooming across the dirt. She saw screaming over the rattle of fire, pointing to the east where heavy weapons were being set up. She saw Carter himself pressed against the rock, blood running down his arm, eyes sharp even as shrapnel tore into him. 15 minutes, maybe less, that was all they had. Rachel fired again, brass casing spinning to the dirt beside her knee. She felt the old tremor in her hands, the memory of that first mission years ago when she had missed, when she had hesitated and a friend had died in the gap of a heartbeat. She pushed the memory down, locked it in the dark, and steadied herself. This time, she would not miss. Still, doubt gnawed at her. What if her instincts had been right all along? What if someone had wanted them here, wanted her here? She thought of the cold dismissal in the briefing room, the way no one had acknowledged her question about intelligence reliability. Had they known? Was she just another expendable piece on the board? Gunfire dragged her back. She spotted a squad advancing on their southern flank, rifles raised, eyes cold. She exhaled, squeezed. Another man fell. Another step bought for her team, but she could feel the tide rising, closing in. And then, a sound different. Not the ragged stutter of AK fire, not the thump of heavy guns. This was sharper, singular, deliberate, a crack that rolled down from the mountains like thunder with purpose. One of the enemy machine gunners collapsed, lifeless, before his weapon even barked. Reeves froze, her eye to the scope, scanning desperately. She hadn't fired. Neither had Carter's men, but the threat was gone. A heartbeat later, another sharp crack. Another hostile fell. "Who the hell is that?" shouted over comms. Reeves swept searching for glint, for movement, for anything. Nothing. Whoever it was, if it was even one shooter, was invisible, perfectly concealed. And deadly accurate. Her stomach tightened. Relief, yes, but also suspicion. Someone was out there. Someone who had planned for this moment, who had been watching them walk into a slaughter. Friend or ghost from another life. "SEAL Team Echo," a calm voice crackled suddenly over comms. "Male, cold, controlled. Maintain defensive positions, let me work." Every SEAL froze at the sound, their eyes lifting toward Carter, waiting for orders. Reeves's heart pounded as she recognized something in the tone. Not just professionalism, not just training, something older, familiar. She swallowed hard. She had heard that voice before, long ago in another country, on a mission she'd sworn she would never speak of again. She steadied her breathing, fired again, clipped another hostile. But the sound of that unseen sniper echoed louder in her mind than the gunfire. Because if her instincts were right, the man on the other end of that radio wasn't a stranger. And if it was who she feared, then this wasn't just an ambush. This was a reckoning 30 years in the making. Rachel's hands trembled as she reloaded, but her eyes hardened. The others didn't know. Not yet. But there was something she hadn't told them. Not yet. She steadied her rifle, but her thoughts were miles away. That voice, calm, sharp, impossibly certain. It wasn't the voice of a stranger, not to her. She had heard it years ago, back when she was still too young, still believing the world divided cleanly between friend and enemy, mission and home. That illusion had died on a rooftop in Sarajevo, and the man who had shattered it. Rachel swallowed hard, eyes narrowing through her scope. No time for ghosts. The battle raged around her. The SEAL team pressed into jagged rock, Carter bleeding but still commanding, Martinez shouting over the gunfire as he worked on another wound. 50 men against 12. Numbers alone should have written their ending. But then another crack split the air. One more hostile dropped. Not her shot, not her rifle, the mystery sniper's work. And with each shot, Rachel's unease deepened. Whoever it was, they weren't just helping. They were saving the team, methodically, surgically, with the kind of mastery she had spent her whole career chasing. Carter's voice cut in. "Ghost 6, identify yourself immediately." Silence for a beat. Then the reply, "No unit designation, just an observer. Strongly disapprove of Americans dying in a box like this." Reeves's chest tightened. Observer. The same word he'd used all those years ago when his bullet had saved her life in Sarajevo and cost 3 civilians theirs. She had been just a junior then, assigned to intelligence support, not even meant to carry a rifle. She had trusted him, trusted his judgment. And when the fallout came, he had disappeared, leaving her with the memory, the guilt, and the silence. Now he was back, here saving her team. She should have told Carter, she should have said his name aloud, but something stopped her. Maybe shame, maybe anger, or maybe the truth she didn't want to face. A part of her was grateful he was here. The unseen shooter spoke again, his voice steady, detached. 44 hostiles remain, flanking maneuver southwest. Move 4 operators now. Carter didn't hesitate. Reeves, Martinez, Williams shift southwest. Rachel moved low and quick, her rifle snug to her shoulder. As she repositioned, another crack rang out. An enemy fighter who had been sighting on her collapsed before he could pull the trigger. She froze. That shot had been for her. He had seen her exposed. He had saved her. Her gut twisted. Why? Why her after all these years? Jesus, Martinez muttered beside her. Whoever this guy is, he doesn't miss. Rachel didn't answer. She couldn't. The battle tipped. With every precise shot from above, the enemy's discipline began to fray. They shouted in foreign tongues, scattering into broken cover. Panic crept into their movements. And for the first time since the ambush began, the SEALs had breathing room. But Rachel knew better than to trust relief. Survival always came at a cost. Through her scope, she spotted a cluster of fighters retreating toward the northern ridge. At their center, one man, tall, commanding, scar carved deep across his cheek. She felt her breath catch. Recognition stabbed like ice. She had studied that scar once in black and white photos buried in intelligence files. Victor. Her throat went dry. The Cold War ghost, the butcher of Berlin, the man whose name had haunted briefings for decades, always presumed dead, always rumored to resurface in shadows. She had thought the stories were myths, but here he was alive, commanding mercenaries on American soil. And the sniper, the one above them, the one whose voice she knew, he was hunting with a precision born of obsession. She adjusted her scope, heart hammering. If this was true, then everything, Berlin, Sarajevo today, was tied together in ways she hadn't wanted to imagine. And if Carter knew who this man was, if he knew how deeply his father's death bled into it, he would demand answers she wasn't ready to give. The unseen sniper's voice crackled again, calm, low, preparing to engage command element. Rachel whispered before she could stop herself, "No." But the shot came anyway, a mile and more across shifting wind, impossibly far, impossibly exact, and yet not perfect. Stumbled, shoulder torn red, but he lived. Rachel cursed under her breath, firing on a flanking fighter to mask her reaction. That shot should have been a kill, but it was, and now he knew his old hunter was still alive. Carter's voice filled comms. Ghost 6, incredible precision. What is your background? Silence stretched, then different time, different wars, call me. Rachel's hands went cold. Yes. The name she had buried for years, the man she had sworn she would never speak of again. And now Carter knew it too, his sharp intake of breath carried across comms. William. Silence, then the sniper's voice again, steel in it now. Focus on the mission, Commander. Over 30 hostiles remain. Rachel lowered her rifle, heart racing. She should have spoken. She should have told them. But how could she explain? How could she admit that she had known this ghost before, that she had once trusted him, followed him, and doubted him all at once? Gunfire roared again, dragging her back. She fired, hit, moved. Her shoulder ached, her throat dry, her chest tight with memories she couldn't afford to remember. And still above them, his shots fell steady as rain. For every life she took, he took 3. For every second she bought, he bought minutes. The SEALs, the enemy faltered, but Rachel's mind was far from the battle. She thought of Sarajevo, of that rooftop, of the civilians who had died because of his choice. And now he was here, saving her team, saving her. Why? Why now? As the last echoes of gunfire faded and silence pressed against the valley, Rachel leaned against the rock, her body trembling with exhaustion. Martinez gave a shaky laugh beside her. "We're still alive. Can you believe it? We're still alive." But Rachel didn't laugh. She pressed her forehead against the stone, eyes closed, the ghost of a voice in her ear. "You move well for a younger woman," he had told her once long ago. "But instincts matter more than training. Always trust them." Her instincts now screamed at her. This wasn't over, not even close. And when the others learned who was, when they learned what he meant to her, they would look at her differently. They would question her silence. And maybe they'd be right to. For there was something she hadn't told them. Not yet. She didn't sleep that night. The team was evacuated, stitched, bandaged, given clean uniforms and coffee that tasted like ash. The Army Rangers who lifted them out said little, just kept their eyes on the bodies scattered in the valley. 52 dead, not a single American lost. That was the story the brass would write. The Rangers didn't ask how. Maybe they didn't want to know. Rachel lay awake in the cot assigned to her, staring at the ceiling of a makeshift medical bay, the fluorescent lights humming overhead. Her rifle leaned in the corner, stripped and cleaned until the barrel gleamed. Her hands still smelled of gun oil. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw him. Not Carter, not Martinez, not the men she'd fought beside, him. The last time she'd heard his voice before today, it had been over the crackle of a radio in Sarajevo. She'd been 24, green, not even sure if she belonged in the mud and smoke of special operations. She had trusted him because everyone trusted him. He had been a legend even then, steady, unshakable, the man who could read the wind like scripture. But legends never told the whole story. That night she still heard the screams. Civilians, 3 of them caught in the crossfire of his choice. He had called it necessary. Collateral, he'd said, his voice quiet, unreadable. She hadn't believed him then. She didn't believe him now. And yet he had saved them today. Without him, she and every man on her team would be dead in that valley. That truth gnawed at her chest. She wanted to hate him. She needed to hate him. But hatred blurred when debt and survival got mixed in. The curtain by her cot shifted. Carter stepped in, his face drawn, the bandage on his arm already spotted with red. "You awake?" Rachel sat up. "You need rest, Commander." "So do you," he said. He lowered himself into the chair across from her, moving like every bone ached. For a moment neither spoke. The silence stretched, thick with unasked questions. Finally Carter leaned forward. "That name, you recognized it, didn't you?" Her pulse spiked. "Why do you say that?" "Because I saw your face," he said simply. "The second he gave his name, you knew." Rachel forced herself to hold his gaze. Carter's eyes were sharp, relentless, the same steel she'd seen when he refused to surrender in the valley. He wasn't guessing. He knew. "I've heard the stories," Carter continued. "My father used to mention him, called him the best sniper he'd ever served with, said he was dangerous in ways that didn't fit inside the rule book." Carter's voice hardened. "But you know more than the stories." Rachel looked away, her throat tightening. "I can't, not here, not now." Carter's hand pressed flat to the table. 12 men are alive because of him. My team, me, you. But I don't like debts I can't measure, Reeves. If he's out there, operating off the grid, I need to know why. And I need to know how the hell he knew we'd walked into that ambush. Rachel's hands trembled against her knees. She wanted to tell him everything. That Sarajevo wasn't an accident, that had been making choices in shadows long before this mission. That maybe he wasn't a savior at all, but a man who carried too much blood in silence. But she didn't, not yet. "Sleep, Commander," she said quietly. "Tomorrow the questions will still be here." Carter studied her, jaw tight, but said nothing more. When he left, she exhaled, trembling with the weight of what she hadn't said. Her silence wasn't just fear, it was guilt. By morning, the questions weren't just Carter. Naval intelligence had swarmed the base, pulling the team into separate rooms for debriefings. The officers wore pressed uniforms and eyes like blades. Every answer was written down, dissected, weighed against contradictions. Rachel sat under the fluorescent lights, her back straight, hands folded. "You're Major Rachel Reeves," the admiral across the table said, flipping through a file thick with redacted lines. "Marksman, cross-trained in signals, attached to SEAL operations on a temporary assignment. That correct?" "Yes, sir." "You reported counting 52 hostiles. That number proved accurate." "Yes, sir." He studied her, eyes cold. "And you attribute the elimination of those hostiles to an unidentified sniper operating at distances in excess of 1,500 meters." Rachel didn't blink. "Yes, sir." "And yet," the admiral said slowly, "you failed to acquire a single visual confirmation of this shooter." "No, sir." Silence stretched. The admiral leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Do you know the name William?" Her pulse leapt, but her voice stayed even. "I've heard it." "From where?" "Training, whispered stories, legends mostly." The admiral's gaze sharpened. "And if I told you that Commander Carter believes this was the one who intervened, what would you say?" Rachel held her breath, the lie balanced on her tongue, bitter. "I'd say legends don't come back to life, sir." The admiral's eyes narrowed, searching for cracks, but she gave him none. At last, he scribbled something in his notes and signaled the guard. "Dismissed." Rachel rose, her chest burning with the weight of the lie. She found Carter hours later, leaning against a railing outside the barracks, his arm bandaged fresh, his face pale but alert. He didn't look at her when he spoke. "They're burying it. No mention of, just hostiles repelled by superior tactics." Rachel joined him at the railing, her eyes scanning the horizon. The base looked normal, trucks moving, soldiers jogging, flags snapping in the breeze. But normal was a mask. Underneath, shadows moved. She could feel it. "They don't want the truth," Carter said. His voice was low, hard. "And that means the truth is dangerous." Rachel nodded once. "It always is." He turned then, eyes sharp. "You're still not telling me everything." Her chest tightened. He was right. And the longer she kept silent, the heavier the guilt became. But what would he do if she admitted it? If she told him she had known, that she had once believed in him, and that part of her still did? Carter leaned closer, his voice barely more than a whisper. "Whatever you're hiding, it's going to come out. And when it does, you'd better hope you're standing on the right side of it." Rachel swallowed hard, her eyes burning. She wanted to answer. She wanted to explain. But footsteps approached, Reeves turned, and the moment vanished. Two guards appeared, crisp uniforms, unreadable faces. "Major Reeves," one said. "You're requested in the command office." Rachel's stomach dropped. Requested never meant optional. As she followed them through the sterile halls, her mind raced. Maybe they knew. Maybe her silence was already unraveling. And maybe, just maybe, had planned it this way. The office was dim, blinds drawn, a single lamp casting sharp lines across the admiral's face. He gestured her inside, dismissed the guards, and closed the door. "Major," he said, his tone clipped, "you and I are going to have a frank conversation, off record." Rachel stood at attention, jaw tight. "Yes, sir." "Berlin, 1989, the admiral said, watching her reaction closely. "What do you know of it?" Her breath caught. He knew, or he suspected. "I wasn't there, sir." "No," the admiral said softly. "But so was Carter's father. And so, Major Reeves, were you ever briefed, unofficially perhaps, on what happened that night?" Rachel's throat constricted. Images flashed in her mind. Old black and white photographs, whispers traded in Sarajevo, his voice saying precautions aren't always enough when the compromise comes from within. She could lie, she could deny, but something in the admiral's eyes told her he would know. So she did what she had always done. She held her silence. The admiral exhaled slowly, his expression unreadable. Very well. But understand this, Major. If Truly is alive, if he truly intervened in that valley, then you and I are sitting in the middle of a storm 3 decades old. And storms like that, they don't just pass. They destroy everything in their path. He leaned forward, voice sharp as a blade. Choose carefully where you stand. Rachel left the office with her hands clenched and her chest on fire. She wanted to scream, to tear the silence from her throat, but she didn't. Because some truths, once spoken, could never be unsaid. And she wasn't ready. Not yet. Why had she agreed to meet him? Rachel crouched low beneath the canopy, dawn bleeding pale light through the branches overhead. Every instinct told her to walk away, to let the past stay buried. Yet her boots had carried her here, 20 miles from Fort, to a clearing that smelled of damp earth and unfinished history. The folded note had been left for Carter, slipped into his quarters with impossible precision. She'd seen it before he burned it, words underlined, numbers that weren't random at all, and the symbol of 2 crossed arrows with a trident. Her pulse had spiked the second she saw it, because once, years ago, had left a similar mark for her. She told herself she came here to protect Carter, to intercept, to control the narrative before it slipped completely beyond her reach, but the truth was harder. She came because she needed to see him. The forest held its breath. She checked her six, scanned the tree line, her rifle resting steady across her knees. No movement, no sound but the low whisper of wind. Then, "You move quieter than you used to," a voice said from behind. Rachel froze, throat tight. She hadn't heard him approach, not a twig, not a breath. Slowly she turned. There he was. William. Time had carved him down to sinew and grit. His hair was more gray than dark now, face weathered, lines etched deep, but his eyes, those eyes were unchanged. Sharp, cold, watching everything. For a long moment, neither spoke. "You shouldn't be here," Rachel said finally. "And yet you are," replied. He stepped closer, the forest seeming to fold around him like he belonged to it. "Sit. We've little time before their drones make a pass." Her chest tightened. She stayed standing. Why now? Why after all these years? His expression didn't shift. "Because you walked into a trap, and because Carter's boy was in the middle of it." Rachel blinked. Carter's boy. He nodded once. "James Hawk Carter, son of Jack Carter, my brother-in-arms, the man who saved my life in Berlin while dying in the process." The name dropped like stone into her chest. Berlin, always Berlin. "You knew this mission was compromised," Rachel said, her voice sharper now. "You've been listening, watching, just like always." Didn't deny it. He lowered himself to a fallen log, setting down his pack with the ease of a man who had lived his life carrying weight. "Your team wasn't meant to survive. You were marked expendable the second you lifted off. And you, Rachel," his eyes found hers. "You were bait." Her stomach dropped. Bait for what? "For me." The word cracked between them. Rachel's breath caught. "You think set this," she whispered. Nodded once, slow. Same man, same tactics, same scar. He should died 3 decades ago. He didn't, and now he wants me. Rachel's hands curled into fists at her sides. Then why drag us into it? Why drag Carter into it? His voice dropped. "Because blood never forgets. Jack Carter died trying to stop him. Now his son wears the trident and wants to finish the story." Rachel turned away, heart hammering. None of this explained why he had reappeared, why he had saved them, why he had saved her. Her voice broke low. "You left me in Sarajevo." For the first time, something flickered in his eyes. A shadow. "I remember," he said. "You called it necessary," she snapped. The words clawed their way out now, unstoppable. 3 civilians died, 3, and you disappeared. I carried the weight alone. Do you have any idea what that did to me?" His silence was an answer. He didn't flinch, didn't apologize. He just watched her, and somehow that was worse. Rachel's throat burned. She wanted to scream, to strike, to break that stone-cold calm. But beneath her anger was something uglier, relief. Relief that he was still alive. Relief that, when the valley became a tomb, his bullet had found her before theirs did. She hated herself for it. "Why me?" she whispered. His gaze softened barely, but she saw it. "Because you reminded me of him." Her pulse spiked. "Of Jack." He shook his head slowly. "Of me, before the years, before the compromises, before the ghosts." Rachel's chest ached. She turned away, unable to meet his eyes. "Won't stop," said, his voice steel again. "He'll come harder next time, better prepared. And someone inside your chain of command is feeding him the details. Trust no one, not Carter, not me." Her head snapped back. "Not you." "I've done things you don't understand," said, standing now, his presence like gravity pulling the forest around them. "I've crossed lines that don't get uncrossed. One day, Rachel, you'll have to decide whether I'm the man who saved you or the one who doomed you." He stepped closer, his voice low. "But not today. Today you walk back, you play your role, and when the next trap springs, and it will, you'll know where to find me." She stared at him, fury and grief tangling in her chest. "You think I'll just trust you again, after Sarajevo?" His eyes softened with something like sorrow. "No, I think you'll trust yourself, and that will lead you back to me." A pierced the trees unnatural sharp. His head turned instantly. "Time up, we split. Secondary rendezvous coordinates in your memory, no paper, no comms." Rachel's throat tightened. "You walk away again and I swear." But he was already gone. One step, two, and the forest swallowed him whole. She stood there shaking, rifle heavy in her hands, heart heavier in her chest. He had saved her life twice. He had ruined it once. And now he was asking her to trust him with it again. By the time Rachel returned to base, Carter was waiting. He stood outside her quarters, jaw tight, arms crossed. He didn't speak until the hallway was empty. "You met him," he said flatly. Her pulse stuttered. "What makes you think?" "Because I found the footprint," he cut in. "Size 10. Old tread, not mine, not Martinez's, not yours. You went to that clearing, Reeves." Rachel's breath caught. She could lie again, but his eyes were fire and her silence was already unraveling. "Yes," she said finally. Carter's voice sharpened. "And?" Rachel's mouth went dry. She thought of his warning, trust no one, not Carter. And yet here he was, looking at her like a man who deserved the truth. Her voice trembled. "He saved us, but he's not just a ghost from your father's past, he's from mine too." Carter's jaw clenched, but he didn't look away. "Explain." Rachel closed her eyes, the memories flooding back, Sarajevo, smoke and blood, the sound of his voice telling her it was necessary. She opened them again, meeting Carter's gaze. "I knew him once," she whispered, "and I don't know if I ever stopped." How much could she tell him? Rachel sat across from Carter in the dim briefing room, the hum of the air conditioner loud against their silence. He hadn't moved since she spoke the words, "I knew him once." His arms were folded, jaw tight, eyes fixed on her like he was pinning her against the wall without touching her. "Start from the beginning," he said finally. His voice wasn't angry, it was worse, controlled, contained. Rachel clasped her hands in front of her, pressing her knuckles together until they hurt. "Years ago," she began, "I was stationed in Sarajevo. It wasn't supposed to be direct action. My job was support, signals, overwatch, training, liaison, but the lines blurred fast. I ended up embedded with a small team, was leading." Carter's eyes narrowed, unofficial. Rachel nodded. "Completely, off the record, off the grid. I didn't even know the operation name. He called himself an observer, same as he did in the valley." She exhaled slowly, her voice hardening. "One night he pulled us into an ambush, not ours, theirs. He cut our way out with his rifle, clean, surgical. He saved me, saved the team, but 3 civilians were caught in his fire." Her throat closed. The images still lived behind her eyes. The woman with a red scarf, the boy clutching her hand, the sudden silence after the shots. "I confronted him," Rachel whispered. "He told me it was necessary, collateral, he called it, and then he disappeared, no debrief, no answers, just silence. I carried it alone." Carter studied her, his expression unreadable. "And now he's back, saving us again." "Yes. Do you trust him?" Rachel hesitated. The silence stretched too long. "I don't know," she admitted. Carter leaned back in his chair, rubbing his bandaged arm. "You realize what this means, Reeves. If has been running ghost ops for decades, if he's got history with and my father both, then he's not just some savior. He's part of the story we've been thrown into." Rachel's voice broke sharper than she meant. "I never said he was a savior." Carter's gaze hardened. "But you didn't say he was a threat either." That cut because she didn't know, and not knowing was its own kind of betrayal. Hours later, she found herself in the infirmary, sitting beside Jackson's bed. His leg was bandaged, elevated, his face pale but alert. Martinez was across the room, dozing in a chair, arm in a sling. The room smelled of antiseptic and quiet suffering. "You've been somewhere else all day," Jackson muttered, his voice low. "Not just here, somewhere deeper." Rachel managed a tired smile. "You're observant." "Comes with being half-crippled," he said. Then softer, "You saved my life out there twice. Don't think I didn't notice." Rachel looked away. The compliment didn't land, not with the weight pressing on her chest. "Jackson," she said, her voice quiet, "if you knew someone saved you once and damned you another time, what would you do with that?" He frowned. "I'd want to know which one was the real them." Rachel nodded slowly. That was the question, wasn't it? Which version of was real? The savior in the valley or the ghost in Sarajevo? Maybe both, maybe neither. By the next morning, whispers ran through the halls like smoke. The official story was already being written. Faulty intelligence, unidentified hostiles, mission compromised but repelled. No mention of betrayal. But soldiers talk. And when 52 enemies die with surgical precision, rumors spread like wildfire. Rachel caught fragments. One shooter, impossible, had to be a team. Maybe Delta had a guy in the area. Or CIA, you know how they bury things. She kept walking, head high, expression neutral. But inside, her stomach churned. The truth wasn't just dangerous. It was alive, breathing, moving. And she was sitting on it. That night, Carter called a private meeting in a secured room. Just him, Rachel, Martinez, and Reeves's sniper rifle leaning against the wall like a silent witness. He spread documents across the table, redacted pages Reeves had pulled from naval archives. "Berlin, 1989. My father." Rachel's pulse quickened. She hadn't expected him to move this fast. "They were part of something called Guardian Protocol," Carter said. "Not officially sanctioned. A network of retired operators who intervened when official support failed. Didn't just appear in that valley by chance. He's been doing this for decades." Martinez frowned. "Vigilantes." "Guardians," Carter corrected. "At least that's what they called themselves." He looked at Rachel. "And he's been watching us longer than we think. He's been watching me, my father, maybe you too." Rachel clenched her fists in her lap. She didn't answer. She didn't trust her voice. Carter leaned forward, his eyes on both of them. "There's a mole, someone with clearance, someone feeding our movements, warned me. If he's right, then our chain of command is compromised. That means we trust no one, not even the admiral." Martinez shifted uncomfortably. "You're saying our own people set us up?" Carter's jaw tightened. "I'm saying my father died in Berlin because someone betrayed his team, and 30 years later someone tried to finish the job with us. Patterns don't lie." The silence was heavy. Rachel felt it pressing into her ribs. Finally, Carter spoke again. "Alive is alive, and somewhere between them the truth about my father's death is buried. We're not just part of this story, we're the next chapter. The question is whether we write it or get written out of it. His eyes locked on Rachel. And I need to know, Reeves, are you with me, or are you still with him? Her chest tightened, breath caught in her throat. She wanted to say she was with Carter, with the team, with the men who had bled beside her in that valley. But's voice still echoed in her head, trust no one, not Carter, not me. Her silence stretched, and Carter's eyes grew colder with each passing second. She walked back to her quarters that night with her head full of noise. The corridors were quiet, boots on tile echoing like ghosts, but inside everything screamed. Her hands shook as she stripped her rifle, laid the pieces across her desk, and began cleaning. It was the one ritual that kept her sane, the smell of solvent, the scrape of a brush, the steady rhythm of putting something broken back together. She thought of Sarajevo, Berlin, the valley, eyes Carter's question. And then she saw it. A folded page slipped under her door. Her chest seized. She picked it up with trembling fingers. Again, same book. Different passage underlined this time. The world is a fine place and worth fighting for. Beneath it, another set of numbers, coordinates, a time. And a single line in block letters. Trust your INSTINCTS. Rachel sank onto the bed, the paper clutched in her hands. Her instincts screamed that this was a trap, that was pulling her deeper into a story she couldn't control. But her instincts also whispered something else. That if she didn't go, she might never learn the truth. Not about Sarajevo, not about Berlin, not about herself. And the silence would destroy her. Was she walking into truth or into betrayal? Rachel's boots pressed into damp soil, the forest alive with the sounds of night. Cicadas droned, branches cracked under her weight, the smell of rain clung heavy in the air. The coordinates had left were etched into her mind, repeating with every step. She had memorized them the way soldiers memorize prayers, half faith, half desperation. Carter didn't know she was here. She hadn't told him. She hadn't told anyone. To confess would have been to invite judgment, suspicion, maybe even arrest. So she had slipped away under cover of midnight, her rifle slung low, sidearm snug against her thigh. But the guilt pressed with every step. Carter had asked her point-blank where she stood, and she'd given him silence. Now here she was, chasing the very ghost he feared. The forest opened into a clearing. A single lantern glowed faint against the trees, set atop an old ammo crate. Beside it, he was seated, rifle across his knees, posture loose but eyes sharp, as if the years hadn't touched him, as if he belonged more to this wilderness than to the world she lived in. "You came," he said simply. Rachel didn't lower her guard. "You left me no choice." "There's always a choice," replied. His voice was calm, almost gentle. "Sit." She stayed standing, every nerve alive. "Why me? Why now? Stop circling, tell me the truth." His eyes found hers, steady and unblinking. "Because won't stop, and because you're already part of it whether you admit it or not." Rachel's jaw clenched. "You keep saying that, Berlin, Sarajevo, now, what ties it all together?" Leaned forward, his voice dropping. "Berlin, 1989. Jack Carter and I were sent in to intercept. Intel said he was trading secrets with a mole inside NATO command. We hit the drop. It went sideways. Jack died holding the line, vanished. The mole covered their tracks." He paused, eyes distant. "I should have died with him, but Jack made me swear to live, to keep fighting. I've been keeping that oath ever since." Rachel's chest tightened. "And Sarajevo?" His eyes darkened. "Same man, same networks. Handprints were all over the war. He used chaos as camouflage. Those civilians." His voice faltered, the first crack she had ever heard. "I miscalculated. I pulled the trigger to save you, but I couldn't save them. That's on me. Always will be." Rachel felt her throat tighten. For years she had carried that night like a private wound, convinced had written it off as necessity. But here he was, confessing it lived inside him still. "I hated you for leaving me with it," she whispered. "I know." Silence stretched, only the wind moved between them. At last, Rachel found her voice again. "Why bring me here?" Set a folder on the crate, sliding it toward her. "Because your chain of command is compromised. Has someone feeding him? You've already seen it. You were sent into that valley as bait. The Admiral isn't your ally. Neither are half the suits writing reports on you now." Rachel's pulse raced as she opened the folder. Photographs, surveillance logs, copies of transmissions. At the center, Admiral's signature. Her stomach dropped. The same man who had stared her down in debrief, demanding answers she couldn't give. His voice cut through her shock. "Doesn't just want me. He wants Carter too. He wants to erase the line our generation held, and he'll burn yours to do it." Rachel's eyes snapped up. "Then why not go public? Why hide in the shadows?" His expression hardened. "Because shadows are the only place truth survives long enough to matter. You shine light too early, and all you get is a corpse." Rachel's hands trembled as she closed the folder. Everything in her screamed to run this straight to Carter, to put it in his hands, to prove her loyalty. But another voice whispered darker truths. If really was compromised, handing it over could doom them all. Her chest ached with the weight of choice. Studied her quietly. "You don't trust me, that's good. Trust is a luxury you can't afford, but your instincts brought you here. Don't betray them now." Rachel swallowed hard. "And what happens when Carter learns I came here behind his back?" His voice softened. "Then you tell him the truth, all of it, and you let him decide who you really are." Her throat tightened. "And if he decides I'm not one of them anymore?" His gaze didn't waver. "Then you'll learn what I learned, that sometimes survival means walking alone." Rachel looked away, fighting the burn behind her eyes. Before she could answer, a sound split the night, distant at first, then closer. The buzz of a drone, military, scanning. Stood calm but sharp. "They're looking for me. They'll find you if you stay." He slung his rifle, fatting into the tree line like smoke. Rachel clutched the folder to her chest. He glanced back once, eyes glinting in the lantern light. "Remember, Rachel, dignity doesn't speak, it acts." Then he was gone. By dawn, she was back at base, exhaustion pressing into her bones. She had hidden the folder deep in her ruck, heart pounding every time a guard looked her way. Carter was waiting in the hallway outside her quarters. His face was hard, unreadable. "You disappeared last night," he said. "Not a question, a fact." Rachel's stomach nodded. "I needed air." His eyes bored into hers. "Did you see him?" Her silence was answer enough. Carter's jaw clenched. "You're playing a dangerous game, Reeves." "So are you," she shot back. Her voice shook, but she didn't stop. "Digging into Berlin, poking holes in the official story. You think that doesn't have eyes on you, if really is dirty." Carter froze. Rachel's breath caught. She hadn't meant to say it. "What about?" Carter pressed, stepping closer. Rachel's heart thundered. The folder in her ruck burned like fire. She wanted to give it to him. She wanted to prove she wasn't hiding, wasn't betraying. But's warning echoed in her skull. "Trust no one. Not Carter. Not me." Her voice faltered. "Nothing, forget it." Carter's eyes narrowed. "You're lying." Rachel swallowed hard, forcing steel into her tone. "I'm protecting us." His silence was louder than a shout. Finally, Carter stepped back, his face hard as stone. "One day soon, Reeves, you're going to have to decide who you really fight for. And when that day comes, hesitation will kill us all." He turned and walked away, leaving her alone in the hallway, her chest caving with the weight of everything unsaid. Rachel pressed her hand to the ruck, feeling the folder inside. Her instincts screamed she couldn't keep it hidden forever. But not yet. Not yet. How long could she keep lying? Rachel sat alone in the armory, the folder spread open across the table under the faint yellow light. Signature glared at her from the page like a stain she couldn't scrub away. Proof, evidence, betrayal written in black and white. But what good was proof when you couldn't trust the hands holding it? Her instincts screamed to tell Carter to drop the pages in front of him and let the truth burn. But's warning clawed at her, not Carter. Not yet. Every second she waited, the silence became heavier. Every second she kept the folder hidden, she became part of the lie. And still she hesitated. The next ambush came 3 days later. Carter had pushed for a follow-up recon, insisting they verify satellite intel on a suspected weapons cache in the Blue Ridge foothills. Officially, approved it. Unofficially, Rachel saw the trap long before they moved. The intel was too neat, too clean. A perfect grid reference, a single structure, heat signatures that read like textbook militia patterns. It was bait. She felt it in her bones. "Commander," she said quietly, standing near Carter before they boarded the helo. "Something's wrong with this op." Carter turned, his expression sharp. "You think everything's wrong lately, Reeves. If I listened every time." "It's not paranoia," she cut in. "It's instinct." He hesitated, his jaw working, but before he could answer, the order came to move. The choice was stolen. They went. And as the sun dipped low, painting the ridges in firelight, Rachel's dread sharpened into certainty. The firefight erupted less than 20 minutes into the mission. Machine gun fire ripped from concealed bunkers, mortar shells pounding the hillside. The valley lit up in chaos. 12 SEALs caught in a perfect kill zone again. Rachel dove for cover, rifle snapping to her shoulder. Through her scope she saw them, mercenaries disciplined, faces hidden under balaclavas. Not militia, not amateurs, men. Ambush, defensive spread. Carter's voice thundered across comms. Rachel fired, hit, fired again. Adrenaline burned away hesitation, leaving only rhythm. Breathe, aim, squeeze, shift. She dropped one hostile, then another, but the numbers swarmed like locusts. For every body that fell, 2 more pressed forward. And then, cutting through the storm, a single shot. Sharp, distant, surgical. Her chest clenched. He was here again. Another shot, another hostile down. Carter barked into comms. "Ghost 6, identify." Silence, just the echo of his rifle, carving open breathing room. Martinez's voice cracked over comms, panicked. "Who the hell is this guy?" Rachel's pulse pounded. She knew. She had always known. And with each shot fired, the truth pressed harder against her chest. But before relief could take root, a darker sound split the air. Whistling, rising. Mortar. The blast hit 50 yards east, the shockwave flattening trees, fire rolling through the valley. Men screamed, comms exploded with chaos. Rachel's ears rang. She staggered to her knees, smoke choking her lungs. Through the haze she saw men advancing, relentless, disciplined. And beyond them, on a ridge far above himself, watching. For a heartbeat, their eyes locked through the scope. His face broke into something like a smile. He wanted her to see him. Wanted her to know this was personal. A mortar landed closer. Dirt and flame swallowed her cover. Rachel tumbled, coughing, pain lancing through her ribs. Carter dragged her into a ditch, his face bloodied, eyes wild. "We're not getting out of this one, Reeves," he shouted. But before despair could root, another sharp crack split the smoke. Smile vanished as a round tore the ground inches from his boots. He staggered back, shouting orders. Had him in his sights. The valley became a deadly duel, invisible precision against swarm. The SEALs were caught in between, pawns in a storm decades old. Rachel fought like a machine, every shot an anchor against panic. But inside she was breaking. Wasn't just saving them. He was dragging her deeper into his war. And knew it. They survived, barely. Extraction birds cut through the smoke at the last second, Rangers pouring suppressive fire as ropes dropped. Rachel scrambled aboard, lungs burning, body shaking. She looked back once through the haze. Was gone, his men scattered. But so was. The debrief was brutal. Questions came sharper this time, eyes colder, his voice like steel against her skin. Twice ambushed, twice survived, and both times whispers of a mystery shooter. You expect me to believe in coincidence, Major Reeves? Rachel kept her tone flat. We held the line, we adapted, that's all there is to say. Leaned forward, his gaze drilling into her. You're hiding something. I can smell it. And if you think you can run silent forever, you're wrong. Her pulse raced, but she didn't break. She sat in silence until he dismissed her. But the weight of it pressed like chains. That night Carter found her outside the barracks. His face was tired, his body wrapped in fresh bandages, but his eyes were sharp as ever. No more games, Reeves, he said quietly. I saw you hesitate out there. You knew he was there before anyone else. And when I called him, you didn't flinch. You didn't even look surprised. Rachel's chest tightened. You knew him, Carter pressed. His voice cracked with anger and something deeper, betrayal. You've known him all along. Her throat burned. She wanted to deny it, wanted to keep silent, but Carter's eyes held hers unrelenting. Finally she whispered, yes. The word felt like breaking glass. Carter staggered back a step like the ground itself had betrayed him. Jesus Christ, you've been protecting him. I've been protecting all of us, Rachel shot back, voice trembling. You think you'd still be breathing if it weren't for him. He's the reason we're alive. He's also the reason we're being hunted, Carter's voice rose. Doesn't care about us, he wants, and you, his chest heaved. You've been lying to me since the start. Rachel's eyes blurred. I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't know if you'd. Trust you, Carter finished, his face hardened. You're right, I don't. The words cut deeper than shrapnel. Carter turned away, his silhouette cold against the floodlights. Stay out of my way, Reeves. Next time I won't cover for you. And then he was gone. Rachel stood frozen in the night air, her body trembling, her silence finally shattered. She had told him, and it had broken everything. In her quarters, she sat on the edge of her bunk, the folder open again on her lap. Signatures, face, warnings, Carter's betrayal. Her chest ached like a wound. She had chosen silence for so long, thinking it protected her, protected them. But silence hadn't saved her. It had only left her alone. The weight of it pressed until she whispered to the empty room, voice shaking. God help me, I don't know whose side I'm on anymore. The order came at dawn. Deployment, rapid response, classified target package. Signature sealed the directive, but Rachel felt the trap the moment she read it. Coordinates deep in the Appalachians. A compound flagged as a weapons depot. Secondary objectives left blank, as if the page itself refused to speak the truth. The team geared up in silence. Carter didn't look at her. Not once. His jaw was set, his movements clipped, as though every strap he tightened was another wall between them. Rachel strapped on her rifle, her chest hollow. She had told him. She had broken her silence. And still, the distance between them felt wider than the ridges they were about to cross. The helicopter cut through thick morning mist, rotors drowning the silence. Rachel sat near the door, wind whipping against her face, eyes scanning the mountains rolling below. It was beautiful, in that terrible way landscapes are beautiful when you know blood is about to stain them. Martinez leaned close, voice low over the roar. Feels wrong again, doesn't it? Rachel met his eyes, he saw it too, they all did. But no one spoke up. Carter's voice carried from the front, 20 mics to LZ, eyes sharp. Rachel swallowed hard. She wanted to scream the truth, to tell them's name, to tell them was waiting. But the words stuck in her throat like glass. If she spoke and was wrong, she'd fracture them beyond repair. If she stayed silent, she might be condemning them all. Her hands shook as she gripped her rifle. They landed in a meadow ringed by cliffs. Too clean, too neat, the same pattern as before. Rachel's chest tightened. The first shot cracked before they'd moved 20 yards. Chaos exploded. Machine guns lit from hidden emplacements, mortars rained down, the air alive with fire. Ambush break left, Carter's voice thundered. The SEALs scattered, diving for cover. Rachel hit the dirt, scope snapping up. Dozens of hostiles swarmed from the tree line, disciplined, relentless men. Her blood ran cold, had sent them straight into another kill box. Bullets screamed past her head. Rachel fired, dropped one, fired again, another down. But for every hostile that fell, more poured in. Carter's voice crackled over comms, sharp and furious. They knew we were coming. This was fed to them. Rachel's chest burned. She wanted to shout's name. She wanted to tell Carter she had known, but before the words formed, a familiar crack split the chaos. Her throat clenched. He was here, again. His rifle sang death across the ridges, carving down hostiles with impossible precision. Forces faltered, hesitation rippling through their advance. But then another sound cut through, a voice over loudspeaker amplified from the cliffs, cold, mocking. Rachel's blood froze. His voice boomed across the valley, still hiding behind children, still sending others to die in your place. How many more? How many more? Rachel's heart pounded. She searched her scope, tracing the smoke. There stood, face lit with cruel triumph. This ends today, he roared. And then the duel began. Shots cracked across the valley, firing from shadows, snipers answering. The air sang with deadly echoes, the SEAL team caught between titans. Rachel fired, covering her brothers, but her eyes kept snapping to the ridges. This wasn't just a firefight. It was a reckoning 30 years in the making. Carter's voice ripped through comms. We need extraction now, multiple wounded. Martinez screamed from behind cover, blood blooming across his chest. Crawled, dragging Jackson by the straps of his vest. The team was breaking. Rachel's chest caved. She couldn't let this happen again, not Sarajevo, not Berlin, not here. She shifted her scope, found, finger steady, breath slow. She squeezed. Her round clipped his shoulder, blood spraying, his body spinning. But he didn't fall. He staggered, snarling, and raised a pistol toward the valley floor. Directly at Carter. Rachel's heart stopped. And then another crack. The shot jerked, the pistol flying from his hand, his chest blooming red. He collapsed against the rocks, eyes wide, face twisted in shock. Silence fell heavy. For the first time in 3 decades, Victor lay still. Extraction came in waves of fire and smoke. The birds roared in, rangers laying down suppressive fire. The SEALs loaded the wounded, bloodied but alive. Rachel climbed aboard last, her rifle heavy, her chest heavier. She looked once toward the ridge. And there through the haze stood. Their eyes met. He gave the faintest nod. Not triumph, not joy, just weary acknowledgement. And then he turned, vanishing into the smoke. Back at base, the silence was worse than the battle. Was nowhere to be found. Rumors whispered of sudden reassignment. Rachel knew better. His signature on those pages had marked him long before today. The team recovered slowly. Jackson's leg was gone. Martinez lived, but barely. Carter moved through the halls like a shadow, speaking little, his eyes hard. Rachel finally found him outside, leaning against the rail under a bruised sky. He didn't look at her when he spoke. It was him, wasn't it? Again. Rachel swallowed hard. Yes. Carter's jaw tightened. And you knew was dirty, you knew. Her throat burned. I tried to tell you. No, Carter said, finally meeting her eyes. You tried to protect him, and in the process you almost lost us all. Rachel felt the words like blows. I thought I was protecting you, protecting the team. Carter's silence stretched. Finally his voice softened, heavy with exhaustion. You can't save everyone, Reeves, and you can't carry everyone's ghosts. Sometimes all you can do is tell the truth. Rachel looked away, her chest aching. And if the truth destroys me? Carter's eyes stayed on hers. Then at least it destroys the right version of you. Her eyes burned, but she nodded. That night Rachel sat in her quarters, rifle across her lap, the folder finally spread open on the desk. She picked up the pages, one by one, and fed them into a small flame. The paper curled, blackened, vanished. She couldn't live in shadows anymore. Nuts, naughty nuts. The truth wasn't in the files. It wasn't in the ghosts. It was in the choices she made now. And for the first time in years, she felt the silence inside her begin to ease. She never saw again. Some said he disappeared into South America. Others whispered he still haunted the Appalachians, a rifle in his hands, watching over men who would never know his name. Rachel believed none of it, and all of it. What she knew was simpler. He had saved her life, broken her trust, and left her with scars she would carry forever. But he had also reminded her of something she had forgotten. That silence can be a shield, or it can be a prison. And sometimes the only way forward is to speak. Rachel Reeves stood alone on the range weeks later, the autumn air crisp, her breath steady. She sighted down her rifle, fired once, and lowered the weapon. The shot was perfect, but it wasn't the shot that mattered. It was the decision behind it. Because in the end, she understood. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts.